Hey everyone, this is my spoiler review for Avengers Infinity War. So, I'm sure for those of you who haven't seen the movie, you know the drill. But I got so much to talk about that I didn't want to talk about it in my initial review just to keep it secret. But I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of it all. So, when I got into the theater and the movie was about to begin, I was just like really hyped. And the best part of that experience was I had a bunch of friends with me, and that just made it all the more better because if you got to do it together. Anyway, the movie begins, and I was expecting to hear that little theme for the Marvel Studios logo that's, dun 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 dun. But that wasn't the case for this movie. It starts off ominous, and that gives you a hint of what this whole movie is going to be like. Anyway, it picks off where Thor Ragnarok left, where Loki and Thor see a big ship approaching them, and that pretty much spells out doom for them. And it pretty much does because Thanos was aboard that ship along with his children, the Black Order as they are called. And a lot of the Asgardians, including Heimdall, get slaughtered, and it's pretty brutal to say. Um, I would say the member of the Black Order that I like the most is, I think his name is Ebony Maw, because he is like the herald, and he delivers a bunch of kind of like comforting words, but they're not really comforting. I mean, it's like, rejoice, for you have been saved. That sort of thing. And as it turns out, Thanos already has the Power Stone in his Infinity Gauntlet. And maybe it wouldn't hurt to show it, but I guess the filmmakers expected us to kind of fill in the blanks for that. And Thanos has like Thor's head in his hand, and he threatens, to crush him if Loki doesn't give up the Tesseract. And Loki, being the god of mischief, pretty much plays tricks on him. Like, I like this one moment where he says that famous quote from Avengers, "We have a Hulk," and then boom, the Hulk comes in and he's just like punching Thanos, and it is actually really thrilling to see these giant brutes go at each other. But Thanos pretty much bests the Hulk, and Heimdall uses the last of his magic to send the Hulk back to Earth to warn them of Thanos' coming. And pretty much gets axed off by Thanos. So, rest in peace, Heimdall. And as I said, Loki tries to play tricks on him by becoming a loyal follower for him. And he like conjures up a knight that he is about to plunge into Thanos, but he stops him, and he pretty much chokes him to death. And I had a feeling that Loki would be a goner for sure. And it's quite brutal, as I said. It's like, his last words were, "You will never be a god." I could just imagine all the Loki fangirls all weeping over his demise. And Thor's pretty much left for dead. That brings us to New York, where Bruce Banner is sent all the way down. He crashes down on the sanctum where Doctor Strange resides. Man, I did a number on my throat there. And it's interesting that in the comics, the Silver Surfer is the one who warns Doctor Strange of Thanos. But Banner pretty much fills that role because, you know, Disney doesn't have the rights of the Fantastic Four. Or do they? Maybe not. So, Doctor Strange approaches Tony Stark, who is out on a walk with Pepper Potts, talking about their future. Right off the bat, I felt that Benedict Cumberbatch's accent was improving a bit. I had a rough time getting used to it because he has such a perfect voice, but I think he found the right pitch in it. Anyway, I've been looking forward to see the two of them work off each other, Robert Downey Jr. and Cumberbatch, for a lot of reasons. One of them being is that they both play Sherlock Holmes, as you all know. And I was kind of keeping my ear out if they would make a Sherlock reference, and I was a bit bummed out that they didn't, but they did make one that was pretty subtle. Sometimes Sherlock would tell Dr. Watson, "Do you concur, Doctor?" And that's what Tony says to him later on in the movie, so live and learn, I guess. Anyway, New York is under attack by Ebony Maw, and I think it's Black Dwarf. So, Stark, Doctor Strange, Wong pretty much face them off. And Stark has a cool new suit that used nanotech. I guess it's the same tech that T'Challa uses in Black Panther. And we get to see Peter Parker, and we see his spidey sense tingling as he sees that giant ship and decides to spring into action. He tells his buddy Ned to create a distraction for him, so he is like, "We're all gonna die, look at that!" And I think Ned has like the least amount of screen time because that's all the screen time he has. Sorry. But he just like swings out of the bus to, help out, and I got a little excited about it. I was like that one woman in Spider-Man 2 where she's like, "Go, Spidey, go!" And we get Stanley's cameo as the bus driver, and he's just like, "Oh, you kids never seen a spaceship before?" So, the action scenes, as I said before, are pretty monumental and thrilling. But that kind of leads into the first issue that some people have, a lot of people have, is that Banner has trouble bringing out the Hulk. And every time he was like trying to get the Hulk out, the Hulk would be like, "No!" And the Russos have said, well, first off, people thought that Hulk didn't want to come out because he got beaten by Thanos and thought he was, a bit of a pussy. But one of the Russos have said that the Hulk has been growing a little knowledge while he was on that planet I forget in Thor Ragnarok, and doesn't want to do it because he feels that Banner wants to rely on him for safety and only use him in fight. And, his attitude towards people on Earth has grown bitter. But I was kind of open to it. I felt that it raised the stakes a bit. I get why people would be disappointed in that, but here's hoping that we'll get more Hulk in Avengers 4. Anyway, we get to see Peter Parker try on that Iron Spider-Man outfit that Tony made for him. It was getting a bit hard to breathe when he was being pulled up with the ship. And it looked so cool. My friend was so excited to see him in that suit because he really loved that suit when it was revealed in Spider-Man Homecoming. So Doctor Strange gets captured by Ebony Maw and Black Dwarf, and Iron Man and Spider-Man go after him. And I believe that's when we cut to space and see the Guardians, and as you probably all know, they run into Thor. And there is some funny banter between us, particularly Star-Lord and Thor, as he gets a little jealous of, Thor's manliness because Gamora is fawning over him. And he tries to, imitate his voice, talking deeper. It's like, are you mocking me? He's mocking me. Anyway, Thor decides to go on a journey to this planet. I have it written down. Nidavellir. Because he needs a new weapon to fight against Thanos. And Rocket Raccoon pretty much wants to go with him because they make some of the baddest weapons there, and that idea excites him. So he and Teenage Groot go with him. At first, I wasn't particularly interested in that little subplot, but the second time I saw it, it didn't take as long as I thought it would, and their scenes are pretty well done, having a bunch of heart-to-hearts that I found myself into. And that was the thing that really stood out to me, is how they establish all these characters with their own movies, and you pretty much care for them. And it's a shame that Warner Brothers couldn't do the same with their DC Extended Universe. They just want to rush in there so they can make all that big money, and look what happened with Justice League. I hope they could put their stuff together. So we find out that Wanda and Vision are in Scotland, and I guess Vision has found ways to make himself more human since he programmed, I guess he programmed the Mind Stone to not be untraceable. And I didn't notice this the first time, but Elizabeth Olsen doesn't speak in her Sokovian accent. She pretty much speaks in her normal accent, and honestly, I don't mind so much. She could sound a little more natural with her normal accent, and the filmmaker said that she's been learning from Natasha on how to disguise her accent. And honestly, I think it's plausible because even though Christopher Nolan is English, his brother Jonathan speaks with an American accent, spending a lot of time in Chicago. Anyway, they're in danger when they're approached by Proxima Midnight. I think that's the name of the female one. And I forget the name of the other one, but they try to fight them off, and Vision gets mortally wounded. And they're in a train station, and a train comes by, and this mysterious figure pops up. And I'm sure a lot of you know, it is Captain America. Or should I say Steve Rogers. I'll go with Steve Rogers because he's an entirely different person with the beard. That's why I grew this beard. And I'm getting accustomed to it. And also Falcon comes in, and so does Black Widow with a blonde hairstyle. Honestly, I like it better when she was a redhead. I mean, she kind of looks like Benedict Cumberbatch from that movie where he was the WikiLeaks creator. I think it was called The Fifth Estate. I think that's it. Anyway, they spring into action and rescue Wanda and Vision. And they pretty much go back to the Avengers' current headquarters where they meet up with Rhodey, and he's speaking to Ross from The Incredible Hulk and Civil War. And it's kind of interesting how they're picking up, what went on in Civil War with the Avengers being split up by the Sokovia Accords. I really like the moment when Steve pops up and Ross says, "You got a lot of nerve coming here." And Black Widow says, "Well, you could use a lot of nerve." Ross goes on about how the world is on fire, and he tells Steve, "Do you expect all this forgiven after this?" And Steve has the best comeback. I'm not looking for forgiveness, and you know I'm beyond asking permission, so you want to get in our way, then we'll fight you too. And I guess Ross was a bit intimidated there. Even though it's like arrest him, but Rhodey just swipes him off. It's like, yeah, forget him. And we get a little mini reunion with Bruce and Natasha. And as some of you know, I am not a big fan of that little pairing between them in Age of Ultron. But it doesn't dwell on it too much, fortunately. They just like, hey Bruce, Natasha. And Falcon just says, well, this is awkward. I was like, thank you. That was one of my least favorite parts of it, but I digress. But back to Thor's journey to the planet, I got it written down, Nidavellir. He and Rocket have a nice little heart-to-heart, and Rocket decides to give Thor a new eye, and it's a brown eye, so one is blue and the other is brown. I like when he puts it on, it's like, I don't think this is working. It's a big cross eye like this, but he was able to put it in place. But back to the Guardians. They tried to go to nowhere before Thanos gets the reality stone, but it's too late. We do get the Collector, and Thanos plays a trick on them with the reality stone, and it's pretty much demolished. Thanos forces Star-Lord to shoot Gamora with the gun, but when he pulls the trigger, it shoots bubbles. So it's kind of neat to see that Thanos has a sense of humor, and he's just like, I like it. They're gone. I just can't thank enough the filmmakers for making Thanos into a three-dimensional villain that you kind of want to hate, but you could kind of get behind his motive for doing this. And Josh Brolin does such a great job doing it. You know, they did so well humanizing him. That's why they made a few changes to him, like his skin color and his like eye color. And even his voice, they don't modify it too much. Anyway, Thanos takes Gamora to his throne room, and he demands her to tell him the location of the Soul Stone because she knows where it is. That's the really cool thing, is that they don't reveal the location of the Soul Stone until this movie. They're keeping it a mystery. And I like how a lot of people are pondering about the location of it. And it's revealed that Thanos has Nebula in captivity. It's shown that he's taken Nebula apart and will torture her if Gamora doesn't tell him the location of the Soul Stone in another Savage scene, since he knows that she is not a good liar. But there's one thing I almost forgot. We see a flashback of Gamora when she is a young girl and her planet is getting demolished. And she lost her mother. We also get to see the Chitauri from the first Avengers movie, and I thought that was a pretty cool cameo. And she runs into Thanos, and Thanos is acting like a compassionate man. It's like, you're quite a fighter, Gamora. Why don't you come with me? That's another great touch, you know, to make him more human. And he even gives her a knife with a double blade at the end. See? Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. You know, that's his philosophy and his goal, to bring balance to the universe with his Infinity Gauntlet. But back to torturing Nebula. As I said, it is quite brutal. Karen Gillan does a good job, you know, making me feel the pain and making me cringe. Her screaming still haunts me. But finally, Gamora tells the location of the Soul Stone, which is a planet called Bormir. Almost sounds like Boromir. But that is the last location that anyone would think the Soul Stone would be. So they finally go to the planet Vormir, and they run into this mysterious person and who watches over the planet. And it's Red Skull. That's like one of the biggest surprises. When I saw it, I was like, looked at my friend there. That was quite a great surprise. But an even bigger surprise is that that wasn't Hugo Weaving. That was actually Ross Marquand. But he does such a good job that I barely even notice. So yeah, it was great to see where Red Skull would have been after he gets consumed by the Tesseract. And he pretty much is due to watch over the Soul Stone, a thing that he cannot possess. It turns out possessing the Soul... But it turns out that in order to possess the Soul Stone, a sacrifice must be made. Thanos has to give up something that he loves. And Gamora is so relieved. She thinks that he is not going to carry on with his plan. That this is the end. And for him. But Gamora sees Thanos is tearing up. And she's like, really? Tears? And Red Skull says, they are not for you, for him. And you pretty much know where this is going to go. He grabs Gamora and he throws her off. I had a feeling Gamora would be killed off because of a quick little shot of Star-Lord raging in one of the promos, and that pretty much gets a little clue. Maybe Gamora will be axed off, and she pretty much does. Anyway, it's so dramatic. That's the thing I had to emphasize. It's how dramatic this movie is. A lot of people are worried it's going to get bogged down by humor or bathos, but trust me, the humor is played out pretty well. It may get in the way, but the dramatic emphasis is more present. Iron Man and Spider-Man pretty much rescued Doctor Strange, and they thought of a plan to bring Thanos to them by going on his home planet, Titan, which is pretty much demolished, and that's pretty much why he's on a journey to balance the universe, because, you know, too many people can cause a lot of destruction, and not enough resources can do that too. And they run into Star-Lord and Drax and Mantis, and they feel like each other is working for Thanos. And there's like a very funny exchange that the audience got a kick out of, where Star-Lord says, "I'll ask you for the last time, where is Gamora?" Stark says, "I'll do you one better. Who is Gamora?" And Drax says, "I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?" Oh, Drax. But they decide to work together since they pretty much have the same goal in mind to stop Thanos. Doctor Strange goes through a lot of scenarios, you know, ways to defeat Thanos. He pretty much sees like 14,600,000. And there was only one way they would win. But more on that later. We come to Wakanda, where Steve meets up with T'Challa, Okoye, and the others, along with Black Widow, Rhodey, and Banner. And Wanda and Vision. Then these ships come crashing down on Wakanda, and out come these savage alien creatures called Outriders. And as you know, a big battle ensues between our heroes and those creatures. And it is quite a spectacle. Thor, Rocket, and Groot made it to Nidavellir. and it's pretty much in ruins, and they encounter one of the dwarves there, and it's Peter freaking Dinklage. And what's even better is that he's not like one of the typical small dwarves. He's a giant dwarf, and that makes it all the more better. His character's name, I think, is Eitri, and it turns out that he was responsible for making the Infinity Gauntlet because Thanos demanded to him, and he pretty much killed a lot of the dwarves there. But that doesn't stop Thor from wanting to make a weapon, and he even he tries to fix the mechanisms that would bring out the star in Nita Bellar that is used for making weapons, and it almost kills him. And the pieces are ready, but they can't find the handle, so Teenage Groot decides to make it into a handle, and we get Stormbreaker, which is a pretty cool new weapon, but we'll always remember Mjolnir. Back on Wakanda, our heroes continue to fight against the Outriders. And just when you think it couldn't get any better, Thor, Rocket, and Groot make their way onto the battle. And it is the moment where the Iris is like, woo, yeah! And Banner's pretty excited, and Thor's like, bring me Thanos! And just when I was getting excited, it cuts back to Titan as Thanos makes his way there. And I was just like, aw, couldn't you spend a little more time in Wakanda? I mean, that big entrance! We could have spent a little more time there with Thor. That was like a little issue I had. I was cut back to Wakanda and Titan, and I felt like there could maybe be a better balance, but I didn't mind so much on my second viewing of it. It's like in Civil War with the airport battle. They don't cut away to another scene. They just let that whole sequence play out, and it is just a total blast. But back to Wakanda. It's so great to see Thor reunited with a lot of his teammates. And Steve points out his haircut, and Thor's like, I see you copied my beard. And I would say my favorite humorous line in the whole movie is when Steve sees Thor's new friends. And he sees Groot like stretching out his arm and catches him out there. He goes, I am Groot. And Steve says, I'm Steve Rogers. I love that. And Bucky interacts with Rocket a bit. And then they like grab each other, like they shoot around like in the first Guardians. And Rocket says, how much for the gun? Not for sale, Bucky says. And Rocket's like, okay, how much for the arm? I'm gonna get that arm. It's pretty incredible how Bucky isn't fazed by a talking raccoon. But maybe he's gotten used to strange things. Who knows? But back to the team on Titan. They work together to try to stop Thanos, and they use their own abilities. Like Doctor Strange uses his portal magic to bring the heroes back and forth, like Spidey and Star-Lord, to bring him down. And they finally got him down, and Mantis is like trying to get him to sleep, but he's kind of powerful, so it's taking a while to do it. I forgot to mention Nebula escaped, and she sends a little message to Mantis, which I think is pretty interesting. I wonder if this was referencing how I get the feeling that Karen Gillan and Pom Clemente, who plays Mantis, are becoming real chummy with each other, because I see them a lot together in interviews, and when Karen would post something on Instagram, I would see a comment from Pom saying something sincere with a heart or something, and I think it's pretty cute. If they are friends, then that's great. And Star-Lord demands Gamora's whereabouts, and he learns the painful truth about it. And this is a moment where people are just like, because he pretty much punches Thanos repeatedly and just makes the plan fall apart. Really? And people are just like, could you not just restrain yourself from this? But for me, it wasn't like entirely out of character for Star-Lord. I mean, it's a pretty valid reason for lashing out because he suffered so much loss. He suffered a lot of losses. Lost his mother, and he found out, you know, I refer back to the scene in Guardians 2 where his dad Ego just flat out says, as I'm responsible for your mother's illness and death, and he's just like, what? And blasts him and goes, you killed my mother! I mean, that is a much more valid reason for it. But he is human, you know. He has a strong emotional reactor. So anyway, they try to do their best to get Thanos, and Thanos stabs Stark, and that was pretty shocking. It's like, oh boy, this is the moment where we say goodbye to Iron Man. But Doctor Strange bargains and for Tony's life with the Time Stone. And after that, Thanos goes, one to go, and makes his way towards Wakanda. Anyway, there's more fighting, and there's a cool scene where Black Widow, Okoye, and Scarlet Witch come together. Scarlet Witch shows her awesome power, and Okoye is like, where was she this whole time? But anyway, Thanos makes his way to Wakanda, and he pretty much bests the heroes as they try to stop him. But Cap just like grabs his gauntlet, and he has a pretty strong grip. A lot of people were wondering if he had the Soul Stone, like it's giving him this power, but nope, he's a lot stronger than you think. It's like, yeah. But Wanda is left with no choice but to destroy the Soul Stone on Vision. The Mind Stone on Vision's head, and you can see that he mouths the words, But Thanos uses the Time Stone to rewind it and takes the Mind Stone off Vision's head. And his gauntlet is complete. But Thor rushes in and puts Stormbreaker in Thanos' neck. Heck. But Thanos says, you should have aimed for the head. That was... And Dazzuma was like, oh no, it's happened. And you see Thanos in the Soul World. He sees his young Gamora. And she's like, did you do it? Yes, I did. What did it cost you? Everything. And we cut back to Wakanda, and his Infinity Gauntlet is like broken. Thor's like, what'd you do? And Thanos just pretty much leaves. And we get the most emotionally heavy scene in the MCU at this point, in my opinion. Some of the heroes start vanishing from existence. Bucky, Black Panther, Wanda, Groot. James Gunn pretty much revealed on Twitter when he said, I am Groot, as he's disappearing to Rocket. He was actually saying, Dad. Yeah, I think Logan did it better, but it was quite devastating. there was a girl behind me who was crying. And while I felt that some emotional scenes could be done, you know, in a subtle way with like subtle music, so like big dramatic music like Gamora's death scene, it was played with silence, which I think worked pretty well. And another thing about on Star-Lord attacking Thanos, I believe this was all part of, what went on when Doctor Strange saw the scenario in which they win. I mean, sometimes bad things can lead to good things, but I'll discuss it more later. Before Doctor Strange disappeared, he said it was the only way. And the one death that nearly got to me was Peter Parker as he felt himself going. He was clutching Tony. He was just like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Yeah. Kudos to Tom Holland for breaking our hearts into tiny pieces. And Tony is left there all alone with Nebula, and he is just very devastated. And the last scene that follows is Thanos coming out of a hut, and he sees a sunset, a beautiful sunset, and that's just pretty much what he had in mind at the end of his goal, and he won. And the movie ends there on a devastating cliffhanger. And what's also interesting is that they don't have like a animated end credit sequence. No, they just have a plain old end credit scene. Everyone was silent seconds when the credits came on. And there was just a lot to take from that. But after a few minutes, they went on discussing about what they saw, before the after credit scene came on. Which it did, and it was Nick Fury and Maria Hill all driving. And it's cool to see Samuel L. Jackson and Colby Smulders. And it just shows all the disappearing that's still happening. Like, people disappear from cars, which ends with them. People disappearing from their cars, and people disappearing from helicopters. And Maria disappears, and Nick Fury decides to go off and gets out this little transmitter to put out a message, and he starts disappearing as well. And I think it's cool that he says motherfuck before he disappears. And it turns out that little transmission sends a little message to someone familiar. A lot of people don't know who, but I could tell by the symbol that appears that it is Captain Marvel. So I am more than sure that she will play a big part in Avengers 4. And another interesting thing is that usually after the end credits, it would end with Thor will return or Captain America will return. But it just says Thanos will return. So you may not know who will be back, but I'm both nervous and excited to see what will happen in Avengers 4. And they're implying that there's going to be a lot of sacrifices that some of the surviving heroes would have to make. And it's pretty surprising how Iron Man and Captain America survived, because we thought that they were goners because they've been from the beginning. But maybe their time hasn't come yet. Who knows? But yeah, that's pretty much, I guess, all I have to say about Avengers Infinity War. It was quite the epic product that Marvel has turned out. And I hope you'll enjoy me talking about it. I really like to hear how you felt about it and what are your theories about what will go on in Avengers 4. I may need some time to recover from watching Infinity War to think about it. But Tune in next time when I will be talking about Deadpool 2. Till then, y'all take care. Okay, all I got to do now is edit this baby and upload it to YouTube. What? No, no, please!